Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Reach Your Customers with Innovative Marketing, Compelling Content and Impactful Social. Good morning to those of you joining us on the West Coast, good afternoon to everyone on the East Coast, good evening for everyone in Europe, and hello to everyone else listening from around the world or catching up on the recordings. Over the next 60 minutes, we'll be discussing engaging content marketing, authentic storytelling, and the latest innovations and technologies you can use to help you. I'm pleased to be joined by a good friend of Incite, Gina Michnowicz. She is the CEO and Executive Creative Director of Union+Webster. They're an integrated advertising agency who work with the likes of Fox, Cisco, and VMware. Gina will be leading today's discussion. We're also joined by two great panelists. Firstly, Erica Kaufman. She's the Director of Global Content Strategy at Mattel, a multinational toy company that stayed relevant with consumers since 1945. And Tina Starkey, Director of Social Media at the American Cancer Society, a voluntary health organization established over 100 years ago that's engaging and helping more people than ever before. Finally, you are also a vital part of today's discussion. There are over 500 of you signed up for today, including marketers from Lego, Porsche, Citibank, Fossil, and many more. So please do type your own questions and thoughts into the chat box. And we'll be sure to incorporate these throughout the discussion, so please don't wait. The sooner you ask, the better. We're also going to be following on Twitter with the hashtag Incite Summit, which is at the bottom right-hand corner of your screens now. So that's hashtag Incite Summit. And I guess one last piece of housekeeping, we will be sending you out the recordings of this webinar. They should arrive in your inbox within the next couple of days. So yeah, please do look out for those. Right, so let's kick off the webinar with our first poll, which should be coming onto your screens now. How would you rate your content in terms of engagement? Is it very engaging with your audience? Is your audience a bit more fickle and unpredictable? Or is it not engaging at all? So please do let us know. I thought a good way to gauge the audience ahead of the webinar. So that question's on screens now. Please do vote now. I can see the results coming in. So we have the last 5 seconds to choose. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we're just closing that poll now, and the results should be coming onto your screen. And the audience is fickle and unpredictable is the winner with over half of the vote. So I guess coming to Gina. Gina, thank you for joining us. Is this result surprising to you?
I think it really does depend on the brand. Certainly, we do see a lot of audiences that are fickle and unpredictable, and so I think it also depends on really the content strategy. So I think some of the things that Tina and Erica will be sharing will actually help to make the audience more predictable. So excited to get the discussion started and kick off.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll let you kick off the discussion, Gina. And thanks again for all three panelists for joining us, and looking forward to hearing more.
Okay, sounds great. So Erica and Tina, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and talking a little bit about your role, and then we will address the poll after that.
Great. This is Erica Kaufman. So as you can see, I work for Mattel. My role is to lead up content strategy. I actually work within the content division of Mattel, so I'm not necessarily on the toy side, but we work hand in hand with the toy division. My role is really to kind of establish that narrative foundation for what our content should be and how we should tell stories for our brands and products. I look into trends and competitive analysis and recommend content formats, platforms, the rollout cadence, and even how much to spend based on, how we can maximize our budget in order to deliver the best content to tell the stories of our brands.
Great, thank you. Tina?
Yeah, and I'm Tina Starkey. I'm the Director of Social Media for the American Cancer Society, and I'm really charged with helping our brand from three main areas, and that's relevance, revenue, and mission impact. And so we do that through our social media work as well as many other marketing channels. And we're really leading, so my role is to lead all of the brand channels that we own at the American Cancer Society. So that's not just the master brand itself, but many of our sub-programs, so fundraising platforms that we have as an organization, as well as thousands of decentralized grassroots field activations that are happening across social media. And so really, my charge is to help define what is the approach to that from the top all the way down to that grassroots level, and make sure that we're hitting the right message to the right person at the right time. And so I integrate across the marketing platforms themselves, but also across our internal integrated marketing department, so that we're not operating in any silos, but really taking content from the brand itself and delivering it across all.
Great, thank you. So I think it would be really great to talk about how we are really developing meaningful dialogues with both Mattel and the American Cancer Society. And so much of that is stemmed from the content. Can you talk a little bit about sort of your audience? Both of you, can you talk about your audience and how you're really developing that meaningful dialogue?
You want to start with
Why don't we start?
Yeah, I can jump in. This is Tina. I can share that at the American Cancer Society, we're really charged, like I said, with sort of taking this big brand and keeping it relevant in today's market. And so our brand is one that directly affects people more so as they age. So our audience tends to lend to people that are a little bit older. But what we're challenged with is really not just defining people that have been affected by cancer themselves, but also the community around them to support all different stages of that life cycle. So people whose parents and grandparents have had cancer, people who are just a conscious consumer that wants to make sure that they're doing everything they can to prevent themselves from getting cancer. Certainly folks that are potential volunteers for us and donors for us at the American Cancer Society, who help drive the mission, who feel passionate about our cause and want to help us move that forward in sort of the new era. So we really do take a look across all of those different constituent groups and define for each campaign or for each activation that we're doing, and take a look at how we can resonate with one area, or how we deliver this message differently to different areas within. So are we looking to get folks to donate, or are we looking to get them to make healthier choices in their everyday life to prevent cancer? So really see ourselves as sort of two sides to one big picture that's helping drive this cancer initiative forward and help prevent more lives from being lost to cancer. So really two sides of the house is our audience, just to sort of simplify that.
Sure. So Tina, when you are looking at those two sides of the house and you're looking at the audiences themselves and you're engaging, would you say there's one audience that tends to be more engaged? And sort of, it seems like because of the side of the people that are maybe going through cancer and potentially survivors, that there might be sort of an emotional hook. Do you find that there's one segment that tends to be more engaged?
Yeah, we really do. Absolutely. And as opposed to it being the person who's going through cancer themselves, it really is the caregiver to that person. So someone whose life was affected because the person they love the most has gone through cancer. And they tend to be the ones that are most engaged with us because they're more active. They're in action-oriented mode. They're, what can I do? What can I learn? How can I get involved to prevent this from happening to someone else? And so that caregiver, who really could be, young or old or any demographic, is just the person who is standing side by side with the person that's either going through cancer or is sort of on the cusp of figuring out what those words mean when they hear it from their doctor. And so we do try to tap into that because there are advocates. They're the ones that have been, like I said, side by side with our cancer survivor and have experienced the offerings that we have. So they experience the programs that we offer. They've called our 1-800 number. They've gotten resources. They've gotten connected through a patient navigator in their hospital. They've benefited from, or helped their survivor benefit from our mission resources. And so when we enable them to talk about our brand on our behalf, and when we engage them to open up those conversations with us, we really see it sort of unleash in our communities and have that authentic connection and that, like you said, that emotional connection.
Great, thank you. And Erica, when you're looking at the audiences for Mattel, maybe you could talk a little bit about sort of how you are looking at your audiences and segmenting, and if there is one kind of segment that is particularly more active that you find.
Absolutely. I mean, our primary target is kids, and you know, of all ages, and it really depends on you know, the product that we're promoting, or the brand that we want to sort of, you know, or whatever activation is for whatever that brand may be. So you know, the audience for Barbie may be a little bit different than Hot Wheels, but and there are messages and brand messages that we try to tell for each of them. But kids is definitely our primary target. We also look to parents. We want to make sure that they feel, we want to gain their trust and make sure that they feel like they are giving their children a valuable play experience when it comes to using our products. And then you'd actually be surprised we have, or maybe not, we have a fantastic and very passionate fan and collector community for a lot of our brands. And so we certainly don't want to exclude them. They're a really important part of our community and probably the most active in terms of engagement. But really it depends on the content that we create and what it's doing. If it's video content that we run on YouTube, you know, our kids are really, well, their parents on their behalf are really engaged in the kinds of content that they're viewing. And if we're building franchises, there's definitely, you know, engagement in those stories that we're telling and the characters that we're building there. So we definitely look for, but we definitely look to tailor content and not only for the audiences, but also what platforms they're on and how they're consuming that content.
Great, thank you. So Erica, it looks like we have a question from Jack Edgar on how do you take a product like Barbie and make it relevant for broader audiences outside of the classic TA for that product?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, a phenomenal example that I hope a lot of people have seen. It actually just only came out two days ago, and it was in honor of International Women's Day that's today, was creating 17 new figures honoring, you know, historical and modern day role models. And so I think, you know, sort of looking at what's important in society today, what are the things that matter, listening to our audience, listening to what it is that they want out of our brands and how we need to evolve and sort of stay a little bit more relevant, listening to pop culture, listening to the conversations that are happening in our world today. I feel like our brands really do try to tap into that. So again, from Barbie, everything from this role model campaign, which is phenomenal. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend that you check it out. We're pretty proud of that. Or Hot Wheels, you know, Hot Wheels is, there's many sides to it. They tap into pop culture and, you know, have pop culture series. They have cars that are based on feature films and video games and are really sort of weaving themselves in and out of pop culture and trying to stay relevant. And then also trying to be educational as well. There's a really great STEM initiative there, teaching the laws of physics using Hot Wheels. It may sound like a stretch, but it's actually real. There's an educational program in schools teaching kids physics using Hot Wheels. I know the question was specifically about Barbie, but I think in general, Mattel, we're really trying to sort of stay ahead of you know, current trends that are happening and what matters to our audience, and really trying to stay ahead in that way.
Well, and I think it's also helpful to highlight because probably Barbie is one of those iconic, you know, characters within for Mattel, but there certainly are a lot of other iconic brands. So I think it is important because it is also a balance on how you go to market. So thank you for giving that additional context. I would like to encourage, just like Jack has submitted a question or questions, for the audience to add questions. We always find it to be a helpful discussion if we can also provide you additional information that's sort of top of mind as we're talking. So we always find that to be super fruitful in terms of our discussion. So kind of piggybacking on the sort of storytelling and the narrative for these different segments, can you talk about sort of how you do that from a planning perspective? You both have touched on that there are multiple platforms. So, you know, a lot of people like to reference that as omni-channel. And so that's kind of a complex ecosystem for because you're dealing with different segments. You're also dealing from a Mattel perspective from different audiences with really kind of different messages. So maybe, Tina, could you talk a little bit about sort of that planning side and how you are really working to build that narrative for your segments?
Sure. So it really does start with the strategy. So we've identified, as we look across the different platforms, what is the consumer coming to this platform for? Inherently to the platform, right? So outside of our brand itself, what's the experience that they're coming for? So whether it's YouTube or the web or one of the social channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, what is their typical experience when they come to this channel? And then how can our brand enhance that for them? How can we be inherent to the natural elements that occur within this channel? And what do we have to offer there to our consumers? So when we start with that strategy as sort of the foundation, the grounding, that almost makes it super easy to decide what channel do we utilize for which content, or what channel do we utilize to find the audience that we're looking for, or do we take something like Facebook that has a massive scale and pretty much everyone is on it, and how do we narrow that down to find the target that we're actually wanting to tap into for this particular initiative? But we really are grounded in that strategy. And so we have defined on paper with our internal teams, with our creative, with our brand strategists, with our agencies, and even with our reps at the platforms themselves, that we know we are utilizing this channel for X. So, Facebook, let's say, is our brand magazine. And the work that we do to build into that planning process for the content itself comes from that foundation. So we have that defined for each of the channels. We work through our internal, all the touch points that we have internally and externally to make sure that everyone understands that strategy and why. Because it meets the needs of consumers on that channel, because it taps into what some of the native elements are that work best in that channel, because it's who the audience is on that channel, whatever. But we explain that why, we hold hard to that strategy, and then we fit the content itself into the pieces as appropriate. Does that make sense?
Yes, it definitely does. And you've touched on something that I think is top of mind for a lot of us, certainly a lot of the brands that we work with, and just in terms of strategy. And we also have a question from Casey Palmer on how are you navigating the landscape algorithm changes on Facebook and Instagram specifically, and what new tactics have you started to use? So you mentioned, a brand magazine publishing on Facebook, and certainly we are seeing that publishers are starting to leave Facebook just because of those algorithm changes. Do you have any insight that you could talk about on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, yes, very top of mind for us here at the American Cancer Society, and certainly I know everyone else as well. The benefit that we have as a brand, that we really, it's not easy to maintain, but we do need to tap into, is that consumers have that one-on-one, like you said at the beginning, Gina, very personal, emotional experience that if they've interacted with us. Or if they've just had cancer, or anyone in their life that's had cancer, even if they haven't interacted with our brand. And so the shift that we're making right now is to be more intentional about how we tap into that. So as a brand magazine, we're going to tell those big hero stories about how people's lives are made better by the work that we do. And so we're going to tell that utilizing real consumer stories of people that have engaged with us, people that have been helped by one of our programs, people that have benefited from the research that we've done, et cetera. And we do that through storytelling on our channel. But what we're also tapping into, given the algorithm changes, is really getting much more connected to the consumers themselves and interacting with them on a more one-on-one basis. So we know that what the algorithms are driving is that close connection with friends and family. So someone who is interacting with our brand or who's sharing our brand's content to their friends and family, it's more likely going to get delivered in newsfeed than if we shared it. So how are we tapping into those people who are engaging with our content and just being there with them, saying thank you, saying please share your story with us, responding to them if they do share their story with us, and just really trying to ground ourselves again in being connected to those personal one-on-one experiences, because that makes them more likely to amplify our content for us. And we know that the algorithms are preferring it if they do, come one-to-one from those consumers. So we're being intentional about that. We're putting planning in place. We're, building out our sort of bandwidth to do more response on channel, things like that we know will feed into what the algorithm is preferring.
Yeah, you're touching on something that's really key, which is, is really community management and engaging. And the brands that engage with their fans and followers tend to have, better engagement. And the sharing notion is very, very important when it comes to Facebook now at this point. Erica, do you have any additional thoughts on the shift in Facebook and how you're dealing with the strategy as well?
Yeah, I think it's actually interesting. I was just thinking about how, obviously our companies are very different, but the strategies are very, very similar. My group actually specifically works on video, but we work hand in hand with our social team. And so I know that they're employing sort of the same tactics. It's really about engaging directly with the consumers and creating fans. And that's also part of what we do too, is establishing that narrative foundation to generate fandom and instill sort of a sense of community around our brands and rallying around them, so that they will want to share and engage with our content, and then it will surface, in turn. So it is interesting how we're looking at all the same things and trying to get in front of these changes that are happening almost daily or hourly sometimes. So.
Yes, it does feel like it's almost hourly, doesn't it? So kind of leapfrogging off of that, we have a question from Mark Jensen, and thank you for everyone that are submitting questions. We really do appreciate it. It's for both of you. So what social platforms do you get the best engagement on? So we've talked a little bit about Facebook and the algorithms, but maybe there's some other platforms that you're finding better engagement. For instance, you're talking about video, so maybe YouTube is the platform you get more engagement. And then what other brands do you follow that you think are doing a good job? Sort of as an add-on question from Mark.
Sure, I can jump in on that. I mean, for us, yeah, YouTube, in terms of, targeting that kid audience, we know that YouTube is the number one. Actually, I think the latest stat is that it's one of the number one brands with kids. We've been hearing it's the number one search engine for kids for a really long time. And so YouTube for us for reaching kids is a really strong platform. And again, when it goes back to storytelling and telling those stories and building those franchises and developing the worlds that our kids fall in love with, so that they will then recreate and tell stories through toy, which is our ultimate goal. YouTube is definitely the sort of go-to destination. We have a really strong following and as a priority platform for brands like Hot Wheels and our action figures. And then we have original content that we're running. We have, sort of amplification of long form content that we use on YouTube. But we also definitely tap into our social platforms. Instagram is huge. We have Barbie Style. Barbie has become her own influencer, and she has both an Instagram and Facebook. Actually, mostly Instagram. If you have it, again, keep promoting Barbie. But if you haven't seen it, you have to check it out. It's pretty impressive. So Instagram we're finding really effective, especially when it comes to the demonstrating the visual, the craftsmanship that actually goes behind our products. And then Facebook for engaging parents. We still feel like that communication and that dialogue, Facebook still is really important for us. So all of those are used in very different ways. And again, for the fan and the collector, both Instagram and Facebook are great ways to engage with those communities. So we're sort of seeing them different. It really depends on the brand, and it also depends on the target audience.
Sure, that makes sense. Anything additional that you'd like to highlight, Tina, on platforms?
Yeah, I would agree. And what Erica mentioned about, knowing that what audience is using what channel, right? So for us, like I said, Facebook, because we are sort of, she said that at Mattel, Facebook is for the parents. And because of where our brand is targeted, Facebook is our bread and butter. But Instagram is really the one that we're secondly most focused on right now, is creating engagement for a slightly younger audience, certainly not totally, moving into the youth audience by any means, but a slightly younger audience that we can engage with, a relevancy message to make sure that we're getting that content in front of people of a little bit younger generation who may not have been themselves affected by cancer yet, or even have the most disposable income to be, a big donor for us, but that we're relevant for them. We're remaining in, their feed in a relevant way and talking about things that they can do to help prevent cancer and how we're moving the world forward in this way. And so that's becoming one of our very engaging channels that we're, testing a lot of different approaches on that channel specifically.
Great, thank you. So we have a question that's sort of, if we've talked a little bit about sort of the audience and then looking at the strategy from a platform perspective. And then we have a question from Tony Beal that once you distribute the content on each native or social channel, how do you amplify that content and how do you measure engagement or clicks? So Erica, do you want to take a stab at that maybe?
Absolutely. It is quite a cluttered environment, or not cluttered. It is a saturated environment right now, and to sort of be heard and be seen on these platforms, it is challenging, and it's an investment. So whenever we're creating content, we always want to make sure that there is a really strong media component to help drive awareness and try to break through. Quality content is, in our opinion, is going to break through and stand out. Watch time is really important on YouTube, and so we want to make sure that our content is strong enough that people are going to stick through a decent percentage of it so that it surfaces in their algorithm. But media is a really big piece of that. So we definitely want to make sure that there's a great media campaign to help support our content and drive awareness and have it bubble up. And then in terms of, and then the second part of the question, remind me again, Gina, it was engagement. How do we measure engagement?
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, in a number of ways, there's the qualitative, the quantitative, which is really about, likes, shares, views, comments. How do we kind of measure how many we get, and sort of the general impression numbers that we can see on our content. But we also are looking for quality. So in the comments, what kinds of things are people saying? Are they liking our content? And we sort of look at that in terms of engagement. Is it working for us? If it isn't, how do we make things better in order to get better engagement and get more people to consume our content and like it, and then in turn, hopefully buy our products.
Great, thank you.
And I can add on around the amplification piece, which is, that it's definitely become a pay-to-play game, and we're acknowledging that. We're definitely doing more testing around how we're using our media dollars to best reach different audiences. But we know that that's just a baseline expectation at this point in the game. One of the other things that we're really, certainly not new by any stretch, but we're trying to tap into a little bit more, is working with our brand partners. So we have a lot of corporations, sports entities, even some celebrities that engage with us because they believe in our brand and that they donate to us on an annual basis. And so how are we really forming partnerships with them to help amplify that content, as well as more traditional influencers, influencers like a mommy blogger who might have a really leaned in audience with kids between the ages of 5 and 13. And, for us, that age range is one that we need to be getting HPV vaccinations, right? Because that is truly cancer prevention, and we know that there's science and medicine behind that now. So influencing their audiences, making sure that we have the right people and the right entities in place to not only deliver it from our brand, but to utilize our partners and our relationships to help amplify.
Great, that's great perspective. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, influencers for us are critical as well. I mean, if you guys haven't heard of unboxing, I would be surprised. Unboxing is a huge and very popular trend with kids. And so there are, it's quite impressive to see what kids are doing these days, or even adults in terms of the unboxing space and how many views they're getting. So we look to partner with those folks to get awareness of our products out there. And even more than that, in the content that we create for our channels, we look to partner with influencers to integrate into that content, and then in turn have relationships with them to then promote on their channels to again amplify and augment our experiences. We have a great relationship with Fullscreen right now that's doing a lot of great content for us for Hot Wheels, and they tap into their network of influencers, and again, sort of we share resources, and that we integrate influencers into our content, and then they in turn promote stuff from their channels as well. So influencers are huge for us as well, and mom influencers and parent influencers on other various platforms as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, I think the power of influencers, it's, I think, nice to touch on that. It also, I think we're starting to see a lot of traction with micro influencers that can target some of your specific audiences, which I think is also interesting kind of play as well. We do have a question that is sort of a little bit different coming from your brands, and you might have some thoughts for Jeffrey Eichenlaub, which I'm sure I've butchered, so I apologize. Any insight and thoughts on best practices and platforms for reaching an audience of women in the 25 to 55 range for a brand that isn't well known? So not something that you're dealing with, but maybe there is a new segment or a new product from a Mattel perspective that isn't as well known, that you're trying to get traction. Any thoughts that you could share with Jeffrey and the group?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we do have our iconic brands, but we are always looking to launch new. We recently launched a new toy line called Enchantimals, and I know that that's not the 25 to 55. However, the millennial parent is important to us, and so that does fall into that. So how do we reach them and introduce new brands to them? I use that one as an example, but we have plenty of brands that may not be as well known as the iconic ones that Mattel is most known for. And so we're always looking for new strategies in order to get the word out there. So, seeding awareness ahead of a launch is really important, so that people start to become aware of it. Again, a paid strategy, it's not cheap, but investing in a good strategy in order to drive awareness, you may have to sort of, in order to break through, especially if it's not known and you don't have ambassadors kind of behind your brands yet, a paid strategy might work really well. And then also influencers. So people that have built-in audiences, it might be a little bit more cost effective to find those people that can help become advocates for your brand. And those influencers that are reaching that audience, that are appealing to that audience, you may be able to get more awareness and a broader reach than a paid strategy, a paid media strategy, which may be a little more challenging to know for sure exactly what you're getting. So to me, I would say we've leveraged both of those when we're launching new brands, a paid strategy as well as influencer strategy in order to really sort of drive awareness for things that people didn't know about before.
Great, thank you.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Check. All the above.
Awesome. So we have another poll. So I think we'll tee up the second poll, and Erin will be putting that on the screen. So what are your greatest challenges in storytelling? And select one of the following. So please submit your answers. And again, thank you for all of your questions. We have quite a few, and so we're trying to address them. We might not be able to address all of them in the time, but we will certainly try. So when we think about storytelling, as we're waiting for the members in the audience to answer, oh, here we go. What are the greatest challenges in storytelling? It looks like we have got a tie. So it looks like a combination of internal resources, lack of time, lack of skills, as well as difficult product to market. Those are kind of the different perspectives. I suspect that, Tina, you might have good perspective on some of the difficult products to market in terms of the topics. And we talked a little bit about that in our prep call. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit and give some of your tips on what you do with those more difficult topics or products in your storytelling?
Totally. So one of the things that I'll just start with is we are marketing hope. From the very beginning at the foundation, right? We're marketing the belief that we could have a world without cancer. And so it's very intangible. We can't take photographs of it and publish that. So we are forced to get into the storytelling, right? So because as much as we're trying to inspire and bring people along with us that believe that we can have a world without cancer, it's just so intangible. So how do we really demonstrate that across to consumers with our messaging? And so what we tend to move in towards is finding ways to tap into how someone individually has experienced our brand, and then amplifying that to show how that could help this many more people, or we could do this much more if more people were, if we raised more money or if we had more resources. So the intangibility is really the starting point. What we also have, which I think you're alluding to, is some really difficult conversations that sometimes happen. We know that up to 40% of cancers are avoidable based on known risks. And sometimes those are hard for people to sort of digest, right? So we know that tobacco is one of the top leading causes. We know that obesity and things that are physical, well-being in general affects how people are getting cancer. And so that becomes a very difficult conversation to have with consumers because they don't want to hear that message. And at the furthest extremes, they feel like we're, either shaming or, too heavy-handed and are telling people what to do. And back off, let me live my life, kind of thing, or they even believe that what we're recommending is actually detrimental, and we come across that when we get to some of the vaccination conversations. So we always tread very carefully, and we just stay really focused on the fact that we don't put anything out in the marketplace that hasn't been proven by science. And we take a very cautionary approach to responding to people, because every single person who comes to us with their own lens of how they've been through this experience in their life. And so there are some times where it makes sense to engage with consumers who are upset or who disagree with us strongly. And there are some times where it just doesn't make any sense to interact with them or to say anything other than I'm sorry. And so we have, I think the biggest lesson for me on all of that is just having thought through all of that before we go to market with anything, is that we have policies in place. We have a lot of people around the table that are helping advise on how we approach certain topics, especially hot button issues, so that we're never going out sort of in a silo without knowing what the full picture is here and what the ramifications could be, and how we will respond once the message is in market if people respond to us in a negative way.
So I think we actually have a question from the audience, and I think both of you can weigh in on this, because all brands do have some negative feedback. But Tony Bacala, how do you deal with negative feedback on social, including those related with drugs, et cetera? So you touched a little bit on that, Tina, so I'm not sure. Maybe Erica, you want to address how you're handling, negative feedback on social, and certainly, Tina, if you have any additional thoughts, we welcome those as well.
Yeah, I mean, we work hand in hand with our internal PR team as well, just to make sure that we're, we want to do right by our consumers, and we know that some of our brands are polarizing, and people have very strong opinions about some of our brands, and we really want to try to explain and get them to understand where we were coming from and the intention behind what we were doing. And so I think it's about trying as best we can to have one-on-one conversations with the people that may have some negative feelings about what we're doing or what we're creating. And so I think it's really just about trying to have that conversation and explaining and really just trying to make sure that as many people as we possibly can feel comfortable with the decisions that we've made. I know that's sort of a vague answer, but it really depends on the situation. And yeah, we experience it. Any given brand may have a negative fan or not a fan, but somebody who is not doesn't appreciate some of the things that we may do. But it's about us really trying to have that communication with them and explain and hopefully change their mind.
Yes, absolutely. Any additional comments, Tina?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I'll mention too is that what I love so much about the social space, the beauty of it, is that sometimes consumers will do that for us, right? So what we also do is we make sure we pause and we don't jump in too early into those conversations when we have, a lot of times the person who's upset or who's, disenchanted with us is the minority. They just don't feel that way because they're screaming loud and clear on social, right? And so it's very visible in a public forum, but they really are a minority. They're kind of a squeaky wheel. So we have so many people who are advocates for us, who love our brand, who've had wonderful experiences with us. And so we also just make sure that we don't jump in too early, because if the message can come from someone else in that community before it comes from us, it's really becomes, self-policing, and it's a more authentic message than us just, trying to change someone's mind, which we know is extremely difficult, if not impossible to do.
Yes, absolutely. So let's shift the conversation a little bit to kind of technology and the tools that you're using. So are there any tools that you use to target your audience, to kind of both from, online discussions and what people are saying, but as well as just an ability to find influencers, just all of the things that we've been talking about. Can you talk a little bit about the stack that you're using and how that's helping you be a little bit more scalable and targeted?
Tina, I don't know if you want to take that
Sure.
for us. It's a little challenging.
Yeah, I can.
Go ahead.
I can start. I can just share that we utilize Salesforce as a sort of a platform of record. We're actually moving off of an older piece of software to our Salesforce platform. And where we are with that is really enabling us to, what's good about having a big giant platform like that is that enables us to use sort of multi-elements of their tool in different facets of our marketing. So our direct marketing team is really getting deep into the details of what we have capability-wise to tap into in the data, to pull insights out of that and to direct target people. But then we also are utilizing that on the social side. And so we're working towards, we're not actually there yet, but we're working towards getting those integrated so that we know if someone has, let's say, donated $100 to us, and participated in one of our Relay for Life events, and also has tweeted at us and we know what their @ handle is, right? So we start to integrate all of those across, where we haven't gotten to the next stage of that yet, which is really to tap into that on the social side and to figure out how we can target people with that data, or, bring new people into the funnel for our organization. But that's really the next step, the next stage. But that's what we're using, and the software that we're using with them is wonderful. We use it for our publishing and listening as well, to make sure that, we just have everything captured in one place that enables us to track and see how things are trending, positive or negative, sentiment, just scale in general. And so keeping that all within that Salesforce multifaceted platform has really been advantageous to us over the past. That's really been fairly new for us just over the past year or so.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's move on to kind of a little bit more sort of a metrics perspective. So how do you really measure success of your content so that you can continue to refine your strategy? So what metrics do you use? And how does that data really inform your future planning? Do you want to maybe kick that off, Erica?
Sure. Ultimately, we're a toy company, so toy sales are critical. What we struggle with, which is, if anybody has a secret sauce of identifying if content drives sales, we're still working on trying to figure out how we actually equal, how we get to that. We've launched a piece of content and it directly led to a sale. We are all ears. But other than e-commerce, we're also looking for in-store opportunities or in-store sales. So, toy sales is really kind of the number one metric of success right now for us. But when it comes to kind of a more long tail, we look at brand building. So the content that we do isn't just about promoting the product and its features. I mean, it is definitely a part of our mix. But we also look at when we're building franchises or growing franchises, telling stories and getting people engaged. So for us, a metric for success is affinity, brand awareness, and then brand building. Ultimately, it will lead to sales if we do our jobs right. But really, it's about awareness, brand awareness, and affinity for the brands that we're promoting. Those are the metrics for success for us.
And would you say brand awareness is around sort of like those conversations that are happening in terms of, or is it more based on like a brand survey that you do?
It's definitely both. Conversations are ideal. I mean, engagement around our brands, conversation around our brands, that organic promotion and sharing of our franchises, that is our ideal way of measurement. So we do a lot of social listening and really trying to see if we're resonating, but we definitely do surveys and have an internal insights group. We do studies constantly to test out and see how we're resonating and how aware people are of our brands all over the world. But yeah, the organic listening or the social listening is also really important for us to identify if it's working.
Okay, great. Thank you. Tina, do you have any additional perspective?
Yeah, I mean, ours is very similar to that in that, we know that we're driving awareness more than we are some of that bottom of the funnel conversion. So awareness and engagement, through the social metrics and web metrics, but ultimately we know that manifests in dollars in the door, right? Donor dollars. And we're charged with relevance, revenue, and mission impact. So dollars that are coming in the door, people that are participating in our events, engaging more volunteers to participate in our volunteer programs, all of that is sort of our top line metrics. But we think we're achieving that. We're measuring the effectiveness of our campaigns around things like, surveys around propensity to give and intent to give and relevance of the brand itself.
Okay, great. Do either of you we have a question actually from the audience, Beatrice Zelenko. Do you have a social media dashboard? And if so, what are the specific KPIs you're monitoring? So you both talked a little bit about sort of how you're measuring and sort of what are those big buckets. Do you have any specific KPIs in a social dashboard that you're using to monitor?
This is Tina. We do. And we're primarily monitoring the scale, so the mentions of our brand as one of the largest, as well as engagement rate with our content. Those are the two sort of largest that we're monitoring on a regular basis or more of a daily basis, as well as, like we sort of talked about before, some of the qualitative. So actually pulling out individual pieces of content that people are engaging with, or people that are posting their own UGC and tagging our brand, mentioning our brand. So those are the ones that we're watching daily.
Great. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say for us, I mean, I'm not specifically in the social team, but I know we definitely have looked at and worked with partners like Percolate and other vendors that have become our social dashboard. I don't know who we're currently using, so forgive me, I can certainly follow up. But we use those tools in the same way that Tina does.
Great, thank you. And sort of on that topic of measuring success, this is a good, I think, segue into the poll. So how do you measure success of content and engagement? So we're going to put that a little bit back onto the audience. So if you wouldn't mind answering this poll, it would be greatly appreciated. Okay, great. So it looks like sharing, commenting, and other more time-intensive metrics, so like comments and those kinds of things, are by and large the top metrics. So 55%. So I think that's in line with what both of you were talking about as well. Do you have, this is a surprise to you, or do you have any additional thoughts?
Yeah, this makes sense to me. This is Tina. I think that, like we talked about at the beginning around the algorithm changes, this is what we have to be driving towards to continue to get our content to be seen, as well as obviously paying on the media side of the house as well. But yeah, sharing, commenting, because it's more, it's that more time intensive and deeper engagement with us, but also really is allowing those consumers to get to help drive the content forward. So that makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad to see that lots of people are tracking that engagement.
Yeah, me as well. Erica, do you have any additional thoughts?
No, I mean, again, for how measuring success, ultimately, I think I sort of just shared, it is ultimately about driving toy sales, but yeah, how do we measure it? I agree. Sharing, commenting, and other time-intensive metrics is also going to demonstrate that content is working. But so, yeah, I agree.
Okay, great. So we have a question from the audience, which I think is a little bit different from what we've been talking about. You might have some interesting perspective. Mikkel Savold, how do you reach an audience who's not using social media daily? So I know a lot of our focus is definitely on social media, but do you have any perspective on this?
Yeah, I mean, I can. So you're asking what's another tactic if people are using social daily? Is that the question?
Right. Yeah. So some segments might not be as active on social media, and trying to get to them.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in. We use, I feel like it feels old-fashioned, but we still do use, email marketing and e-newsletters. Fisher-Price is, all of our brands actually do sort of continue to mine that database that we've collected of people who have, opted in to receive information from our brands. And we really try to make those communications really valuable. Again, this isn't necessarily my area, but I do know that especially starting with Fisher-Price and getting moms in even before they've had their child, we really want to sort of engage them and start conversations and become a trusted source of information for them at a very early stage. And so while that demographic is actually very heavily on social, we also look at other ways to reach them, and email marketing is one of those ways.
Yeah, I think email is one of those things that people have said it died, and it definitely is still one of the important ways to reach audiences, for sure. Any additional
Tina, email is not dead for us at all by any stretch, and that's exactly what I was going to say too. And just even some of the more traditional marketing efforts. So again, knowing our audience and certainly that people have a propensity to give at an older age because they have more disposable income. We're doing some radio advertising. We're doing television advertising. We're still doing some of the much more traditional ways to reach consumers, as well as direct marketing through email and even, mailers out of home, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yep. TV is still a very important part of our mix as well. And yeah, radio a little bit less so because we like to show the products, but absolutely there's the more quote unquote traditional forms of advertising and marketing, exactly like Tina said.
Yep, absolutely. So I think this is a good segue into to describing, if each of you could describe your most meaningful campaign to engage with your target audience in last year. So what was your favorite campaign? And maybe it's something that you've just recently launched. It sounds like Mattel has got a few campaigns that you've just launched that you're excited about. So maybe kick it off, Erica.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned it at the top of the session, but I think I didn't personally work on it, but I am incredibly proud of what the Barbie team has done with the role model campaign. They've done video content, narrative stories, and so on, and integrating throughout a lot of the stuff, the content that we already had been creating. We're really trying to find a way to weave this incredibly important message that they're trying to tell. And they've done, just, again, it's not just about, so what Barbie's about is imagining the possibilities, but we really wanted to show them and show girls how to, that they can be anything. It's not just imagining that they can be anything, they can do it themselves. And so by creating these amazing figures to sort of represent the role models that they can emulate, it was really amazing to see come to life in so many different ways, and content was a big driver for that. It's around storytelling, telling the stories of these women, and so that's one I definitely want to tout. I mean, on the other side, a little bit later, is on the Hot Wheels side. We recently launched a campaign targeted toward mom. It was a really fun TV spot that also ran in digital, where a mom is driving her son and sort of trying to teach life lessons and using Hot Wheels to do so. If you haven't seen that, I don't want to give anything away. You can go ahead and Google that commercial. It's pretty fun. But it's also showing the benefits, of play, and also, but with mom and her son, and how Hot Wheels can bring them together, but also educate and teach. And I felt like that was a really great campaign that we were proud of.
Those both sound like they're also touching on a lot of the kind of trends within STEM or STEAM, and just really sort of gender and empowerment for women. Can you talk about how you are identifying those opportunities, and if there's just kind of a way that you determine how you want to go with a campaign like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've been talking a lot about marketing campaigns, but we also in the content space. Well, another example that I haven't mentioned is Thomas and Friends. So actually, starting next week, we're going to be airing on Nickelodeon. To take him off of Sodor, which is, if you're familiar, is the sort of island that he's been contained to for so many years, and we're taking him around the world and trying to teach kids about different cultures and different places all over the world. How we kind of identified that these needs or these things were important. We have educational consultants. Again, it's a lot of social listening. It's a lot of trying to keep up on what trends, what people are talking about, what's important to parents, what they want to instill in their kids. So there's just a lot of conversation happening, again, with experts in the educational field, looking at studies about what's going to be the sort of next. I mean, we've all heard that today, what kids are studying now, what jobs they're preparing for now won't exist in 20 years. So we're sort of listening at all the things that are happening in the world right now, and really trying to influence and infuse that in the products that we create. So it's not one thing, we're really just trying to keep our ear out on everything that's happening in the world.
Thanks a lot, Erica. Sorry to jump in. We're running out of time for the webinar now. So I just wanted to leave time to say, a very big thank you to Gina, Erica, and Tina. It's been a really interesting discussion. I've written lots and lots of notes, and I'll be definitely listening again on the recording, which will be sending out to all of you. But before you all leave for a well-earned coffee, I just wanted to give a shout out to our next brand marketing summit. So if you'd like any more brand learnings and sharings, please do come along to the Brand Marketing Summit happening this May. It's featuring 50 brand speakers, including Levi's, Turner, National Geographic, Intel, EA. You can see even more on your screen now, and do check out insitegroup.com/west to view more as well. So thanks again for joining us today, and one last big thank you to Gina, Erica, and Tina. And I hope to catch you on the next webinar soon. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.